it take to read? You might be surprised at the answer. I'm Dr. Emily Sherwood. If you're interested in education policy and in literacy as a global concept, please like and subscribe. So I've been having a lot of discussions about children who are struggling to read, and unfortunately in the United States and worldwide there are many people who struggle to read. It's just a fact of life. But almost always when I encounter a parent whose child is struggling to read, either someone comments or the parent has some kind of experience around the concept of dyslexia. There's this idea in this society that anyone who struggles to read, that person must have dyslexia, and that there is a certain format and a certain way to treat that, and the child needs an IEP right away, and the child has organic problems and is going to struggle their whole childhood. And in actuality, reading is a lot more complex than that. Dyslexia as a term is very controversial in the reading world, believe it or not. And again, there's this concept, especially in the United States, that dyslexia is very prevalent. Upwards of 10% of students will have dyslexia, that it's this really hard thing, and it involves special education professionals, it involves therapists. And dyslexia is really hard to have a definition for to begin with. What it means is that, having trouble reading. And in American society, based on a lot of advocacy, because dyslexia is highly politicized in the United States, that has come to mean decoding problems. That's what's meant by dyslexia. And at this point in time, almost every state has very strict dyslexia laws. They've got screeners, and there's this push in most of the country, if not all of the country, to treat any student who qualifies based on the screener as having dyslexia, as having a decoding problem. Problem with that is that these screeners and the characteristics of dyslexia may be caused by decoding problems, but they may be caused by other things. And that's what I'm hearing and seeing a lot of, is these parents are spending a lot of money. They may go to a lot of experts. They may work for years and years, and the problem is never really solved. Well, it could be a decoding problem. That's quite possible, and a lot of students do have decoding problems, but it could also be another type of problem. So when we talk about reading, that there's multiple things that go into reading, and it's because other problems are being overshadowed by decoding issues. And that's where the concern comes from literacy scholars. Of course, we want to help students who need help. Everyone does. Or I hope you wouldn't be a literacy scholar. The controversy is that decoding is being emphasized at the expense of other skills that could help these students more. So what are these other skills? So in almost every language, there are some exceptions. I'm going to talk about that at the end of this. But in almost every language, there are 5 components, elements. And some people call them the 5 pillars of literacy. And the whole idea of the 5 pillars came about at the National Reading Panel, which was done during the Bush administration. But it really does sum up all the different things that are needed to read. And so if a student has a problem reading, it could be any of these things. So the first one is phonological awareness. You also hear phonemic awareness. That is how language works. And so as students understand, for example, students can sort words that have the same beginning sounds or the same ending sounds. They understand that letters go together to make words. Students can break words down into syllables. That's phonemic awareness or phonological awareness. Again, you hear both terms. The second pillar is the one that's emphasized so much, and that's phonics. Or decodings. How letters turn into sounds. That's very much emphasized in the schools, and sometimes it's emphasized too much. And again, there could be another problem or a different problem the student needs to focus on to get better at reading. The third pillar is fluency. That means being able to read automatically. So a lot of students will struggle to read large text. They run out of steam. They start to become very disengaged because it's just really hard. It takes a long time. It's not a fast process. Students with those type of problems generally have a fluency problem. Then there's comprehension, and comprehension, especially for students who are learning a second language, can be very, very difficult. And comprehension means that the student has trouble understanding what the student reads. So there are a lot of students, they call them word callers, who, because of this huge push for decoding and this huge emphasis on phonics, they can say words. They can sometimes say words really fast, but they don't understand what they read. And this problem is found a lot in English learners. Particularly English learners who might come from a sound system that's very similar. For example, students who speak Spanish, they can have problems with decoding. Maybe they never learned it in their home language, and I've seen that before. That does happen. Many times it's a comprehension problem or understanding, because you're not really reading if you don't understand. And there's vocabulary, understanding the meaning of words. And this is also something that people who are learning English obviously have a harder time with, but it's also found in native English speakers. Or students who are reading in their first language. And that a lot of times has to do with world knowledge. Students may not have heard enough words to have really good vocabularies, especially if they live in poverty or they don't have good early educational experiences. Now, most languages, almost all languages in the world, have these 5 pillars. But there are exceptions. Now, and those are languages where there is not a phonetic system. What do I mean by that? I mean languages where there are basically characters to memorize. There's not a sound system, there's not an alphabet per se. It's more you have to memorize the characters. And sometimes the characters have meaning. Sometimes there are parts of them that have meaning, but it's not based on sound. And the big languages that are affected by that are Chinese and Japanese. Chinese is the most common, Mandarin Chinese is the most commonly spoken language in the world. And for those students, in place of a phonological system, what's more important is the ability to recognize the characters. So it becomes more about sight than sound. So this is the beginning to a series, and I'm going to go in depth with each of these pillars. And I hope that this is helpful to people, especially people who maybe have someone in their life who's struggling to read. I hope that this helps to give you some concepts about what is going on with your child or your young person in your life and how you can help that person. And if you find this really interesting and you want to know more, you want to hear the rest of the series, please like and subscribe. And until next time, keep learning.